Welcome back, budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here, disciple of Christ, husband, father, and financial coach. And today on the New Money Habits podcast, I'm going to plead with you. I'm going to beg you. I may even get emotional. Please, please, please plan for end of life expenses. Hey there, budgeteers. The new year is here, and you know what that means. It's time for fresh starts and new habits. If one of your goals is to get better with your money, New Money Habits has exactly what you need to kick things off right: the Payday Power Planner. This isn't just any budget tool. The Payday Power Planner is designed to work with your pay periods, not just the calendar month. Why does that matter? Because it helps you to see exactly when your money is coming in and going out. No surprises, no guesswork. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll know if you're working with a surplus or facing a deficit, so you can make informed decisions about your money. It's not just a plan, it's the clarity and control you've been looking for to start the new year strong. Make this the year you finally build new habits for financial freedom. Grab your free Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and take the first step toward a better financial future. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now, because this year it's time for a better plan for your money. So this one hits too close to home right now, because we are experiencing death throughout the family. And I'm helping brothers walk through and grieve death that they're experiencing in their lives. And so I'm just noticing more and more death around me. And it's making me very sad to know that in most cases, there is very little, if any, planning for end of life, whether it be financially or otherwise. There just seems to be very little planning. And I don't want to be like the pessimist here. I'm just going to be a realist. Every single one of us will die at some point. And as we make that transition from earth to eternity, I do want to encourage everybody to be ready to meet their maker and be spiritually prepared to be in the presence of the Lord. And I want to encourage all of us to have a plan for our loved ones. Our loved ones who are left behind are the ones who are going to mourn and grieve. And their world is going to be turned upside down in some cases. Whatever we can do to lighten the burden, I would encourage us to do that, to make plans to lighten the burden. Back in December, my wife lost her father. He was only in his 70s, so we all agree that this was premature. We would have loved to have seen him live to his 80s and even into his 90s. But unfortunately, he had a disease that ended his life. And it's just abundantly clear that he had no plan for end of life. There was no financial plan. There was no plan. And the lack of plan can lead to frustration, disappointment, anger, disbelief. There were so many projects around the house unfinished. There were other things that needed attention that were avoided. And there was no financial plan. Now, I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but I'll give you a high-level insight. Without any real financial plan, and what I mean by that is life insurance or some significant amount of savings or investment. None of that exists. And so my mother-in-law is left with a small pension and some Social Security benefits. And she has to maintain their lifestyle and the things like mortgage and whatnot with a small pension and some Social Security benefits. Now, I don't know all of the ins and outs and the details, and maybe it's enough. Maybe it's more than enough, and I pray that it is more than enough. But the principle, the idea is, because of a lack of planning, my mother-in-law is burdened by the lack of planning law. And unfortunately, that's not the only death in the family recently. We also experienced a loved one who took his own life. In his 40s, leaves behind a wife and 2 children. I, again, have no insight to their actual financial situation, but as an outside observer looking in, the evidence suggests that, again, there was no life insurance, there was no end-of-life plan. And so now, this guy's wife and kids are left to grieve while trying to figure out what to do financially. Going from a 2-income household down to a 1-income household. And again, I don't have insight, so I have no idea whether they have a reasonable mortgage that can be handled on 1 income, or if 2 incomes were needed to maintain that mortgage. I have no idea if they have other debts. But as an outside observer looking in, it seems like, again, there's no end-of-life plan. And so now people are grieving, and they have the additional stress of financial burden. And I'm not just talking about the financial burden of end-of-life arrangements, like a funeral and those expenses. I'm talking about the perpetual expenses of a mortgage or a car payment or this debt or that debt. And then even more recently, a good friend of mine lost his grandmother. Now, grandma was 95 years old, had lived a very long and fruitful life. And it was evident that she had a plan. Not only was she ready to go meet the Lord, she loved the Lord. Not only did she share that love of the Lord with her loved ones so that they too could establish a relationship with the Lord. So she was prepared for end of life that way. But it was also evident that there was other planning going on. Now, maybe there wasn't a need for as much planning, right? She's 95 years old. And those final arrangements and needs are going to look different for somebody who's in their 80s or 90s than it's going to for somebody who isn't even yet middle-aged. A 40-year-old has different needs to be thinking about. And I'm not talking about somebody who is depressed or is contemplating taking their own life. I'm talking about the regular, hardworking 40-year-old who's married and has 2 kids who does not, tomorrow's never promised. That man doesn't know if he's going to make it home from the job site today. And so we can't just take for granted, oh, well, tomorrow, like I'll do that tomorrow. Tomorrow's never promised. The truth of the matter is, our next breath isn't promised, let alone tomorrow. And it's going to be different. The 40-year-old's needs are different than even a 70-year-old who has entered into retirement, but yet doesn't have necessarily a financial plan in place that has eliminated debts and allows you to live minimally. But here's my main point so far. Death is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. And I want to encourage everyone to be thinking about end of life. I don't want to paint a black cloud of depression over anybody, but living in reality of every one of us is going to die. Do we have a plan in place for our loved ones for when that happens? To try to alleviate some of the stress and the anxiety around like the finances. And in the case of like my father-in-law, the projects around the house, had those projects already been done, it would have reduced the stress and the anxiety that my mother-in-law is experiencing. So the difference is whether or not your loved ones end up being devastated and financially burdened, or are they just allowed to grieve? Or are they just allowed to grieve? What a blessing to have plans in place that allow your family and your loved ones to simply grieve without the worry of unfinished business and financial burdens. As I said earlier, we all have to be spiritually prepared to go and be with the Lord and meet Him and make an account for who we are and the decisions that we made. I'll take a moment here to just remind everybody of the same message that you hear when you hear me give the good news message. And that is, when you go to give an account, your account is not, did your good outweigh your bad? That does nothing for you, because even your best work here on earth is rags in comparison. So simply understand the simple basic truth. Jesus died in your place. You're the one who sinned. There's a punishment that comes with that. It's called death. Jesus can take death off of you because of what He did on the cross and allow you to live forever. So be ready spiritually, but also be ready financially and otherwise to lighten the burden from those who are left behind. It's the ones who are left behind who are grieving and sad and overwhelmed and shocked. And the last thing they want to think about is, do I got to get back to work so that I can make the mortgage payment? Wouldn't it be great if they could just grieve? With that being said, I know I'm wrapping up segment number 1, which leads right into the gospel message. So please pay extra special attention to it this time around.
Hey there, budgeteers. You know, good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves.
All right, so let's unpack the financial reality of death. In many cases, unless you have eliminated all your debt prior to death, including your mortgage, 9 times out of 10, your family is left with mortgage or a rent payment. They might have car payments. Maybe there are childcare expenses. Maybe there's college that is either you're in the midst of or you are saving up for. You have all these things going on, including your daily needs. I still got to put food on the table. I still got to keep a roof over my head. I got to keep the lights on and the water running. I got to be able to get to work and back. And so whether that's the car payment, but even if there's not a car payment, there's car insurance and there's gas. And all of these things still need to take place. Plus, there is end of life expenses, funeral expenses. As I mentioned in the first segment, my wife lost her father back in December. And everything that my mother-in-law did was very simple and basic. A simple cremation, a simple urn, a simple this, that, and the other. And even the simple was like $3,000. So imagine if you did anything beyond simple, if you're actually burying, and so now a casket and this and a plot and a funeral service and a funeral hall and all of these expenses add up. It can be anywhere between 7, 12, as much as $20,000. It can certainly be more than that, but on average, we're talking $8,000 to $12,000. So there's all these expenses that the family is left with. So the next part of the reality, the financial reality of death is employer life insurance isn't enough. We'll talk about in a moment what is enough, but I remember having a conversation with friends recently where they were talking about, we were talking about life insurance in general, and then they brought up, oh yeah, I have employer-sponsored life insurance. And one was like, yeah, I think mine is $100,000, and the other was like, maybe mine's like $150,000. I'm telling you right now, it's not enough. It's not enough. It is not enough coverage. Now, $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 will certainly help with end-of-life funeral expenses, and then leave some for maybe paying off some debts. But that's not the point. The point isn't just to cover the costs of a funeral and a burial. The idea of life insurance, especially in the case of the middle-aged man, the 40-year-old with a family, the idea is to replace your income, and not for 1 year, to perpetually replace your income. to give your family time to breathe, to give your family time to rebuild. And the problem with an employer-sponsored life insurance policy is if you leave that employer, it doesn't come with you. So you have to be employed at the time. I'd rather you own your own life insurance policy, one that's on your name, you're paying the premium, and it covers a lot more. But again, $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 is not enough coverage. So what is the right amount? What is the right amount of life insurance? For a very long time, it's been 10 to 12 times your annual income. So when I got life insurance in place, I was making $70,000 a year. I got a $700,000 life insurance policy. Why so much, you might ask? Because again, this is about replacing my income perpetually, year after year after year. How does that happen? Well, when you can invest $700,000 properly, and now it can earn you somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000 annually, you have effectively replaced the income perpetually. It can also be used in different ways. My wife and I have talked about it. Because our mortgage is so low at this point, it's like, pay it off. Pay it off. One less thing for you to have to worry about. But it still leaves enough to be invested where she can make $3,000 to $5,000 a month, and $3,000 to $5,000 a month without a mortgage, without a car payment, without any debt. Now she can live off of that. She can live off of that. And what she doesn't have to do is she doesn't have to concern herself with running out and getting a job. See, my wife has worked from home, in the home, since before our children were born. She knew she wanted to be somebody who stayed at home. I wanted to be with somebody who would stay at home. And so my wife has not worked outside the home in over 15 years because she's had the most important job she could possibly have, being right here, pouring into our kids, pouring into our home, making our house a home, pouring into our two children, who are incredible human beings, caretaking after all of the four-legged creatures that she loves so much. Why should that all be uprooted if something were to happen to me? It shouldn't. Instead, I should prepare for the day that I'm not here. Now, my wife and I have this kind of running joke where I'm not allowed to go before I'm like in my 90s. Now, from time to time, I have to remind her that I don't really get to control that, but I'll do my best. I'm going to try to be here until I'm in my 90s. We also have an agreement that she has to go before me, or we have to do it Notebook style. And so if you've ever seen the movie, spoiler alert, at the end, the two die together. So the right amount of life insurance is 10 to 12 to maybe even 15 times your annual income. So for anybody out there who's making $60,000 a year, I want you to go and get yourself a $600,000 to maybe even as high as like $900,000 life insurance policy. This will be enough to cover years of income, if not the rest of your spouse's life. Now, there is a possibility that if something happened to me and Christina got $700,000 and she paid off the house and the other little debts that we have, and she invested the rest, but see, that's the thing, she invests the rest, make $3,000 to $5,000, even if she invested in like an annuity, even if she took $500,000, invested in an annuity, and that annuity paid $2,500, $3,000, $5,000 a month. Well, now that's until she dies. And so she's taken care of. But if it's even just um, invested in the market and she's just trying to earn somewhere between 8 and 10% to live off of that, maybe. And so maybe she runs out. That's what I was leading up to. Maybe she does run out one day, but it ain't going to be anytime soon. She'll be good for 10, 15, 20 years. Now, if in 20 years she wanted to do something different and work or sometime in between now and then on her own accord, great. I'm not saying she can't. I'm just saying she doesn't have to. Her lifestyle doesn't have to radically change because something happened to me. She gets to maintain a sense of normalcy because it's already not going to be normal. Right? If something happened to me, it's already not normal. And so, what? She's going to go from being a full-time homemaker, stay-at-home mom who runs the kids around to all of their activities, highly involved, highly hands-on, to what? Working 40 plus hours a week? Not being around? So the kids are going to lose their father and now never see their mother? I want to apologize. I do. I want to apologize if this is heavy, but you have to understand the weight of this. You have to understand the weight of your decision not to do this. It is very loving to prepare for end of life. I will stop short of saying it's unloving not to. I'm not going to make that claim. I'll come just up to it and say, consider if it is loving to do it, what does not doing it look like? $10 to 15 times your annual income. And it's not just on me. There's a life insurance policy on Christina. Now, she doesn't work outside the home, so we had to kind of take a educated guess as to how much would be enough. I work. I would expect that I would continue on working, but I probably would need help with things like childcare that I don't pay for right now. I might want to be able to pay off the house so the mortgage, I don't have to worry about the mortgage. So I had to sit down and we talked about what would it look like? How much should I have coverage on you in case you weren't here? What does that look like? Sure, you don't necessarily draw an income, but you bring a ton of value. And now I would have to pay somebody to do the things that you do. And in part, I share all of this because what's really interesting to me is a little bit of the projection that happens when somebody doesn't do something and then they experience a negative consequence. They kind of want to share that with other people and say, look, be careful, learn from my mistake. And so Christina's mother has done that a little bit where she's like, hey, dad didn't have this in place or that in place. And so, make sure that you're taking care of these things. And Christina's all like, absolutely. Yeah. Nino and I have done that. But she's not hearing it. It's very, very interesting to me. It makes me wonder like what projection I might be having right now where I'm like, I'm just urging you to go and do this. It's so important. It's so important. It is one of the most loving things that you can do for your family is protect them financially in case something were to happen to you. So, if you do not have life insurance, go. Don't walk, run. Go. Get life insurance. When I got my life insurance implemented, when I went through the process, My $700,000 policy cost me $27.75 per month. It is so affordable. Term life insurance. It is so affordable. Now, obviously, my age had something to do with that. My health and the fact that I'm not a smoker and I'm not a drinker and I don't have a history of family diseases all played a factor in that. Right? If I did it today, 15 years later, my premium wouldn't be $27.75. But would it still be under 50? Would it be under 70? Would it be under $100 a month? Think about what you spend $50, $75, or $100 a month on in your budget today that would be better used on life insurance that provides for your family in the event that something happened to you.
Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock-solid financial foundation. Here's the deal. We're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom.
Okay, so I kind of said this already, but it bears repeating. If you are married and or you have kids, it is your job to make sure that they are okay when you are not around. And that starts with this easy decision to do something to financially protect your family. Make sure they know what the plan is with that money. And I'll get to that in a moment. If you're single, then have a basic will, some type of directive in place so that your loved ones don't have to guess what's supposed to happen or fight and argue about what is to happen. Even if you're single, you might want to have a small life insurance policy for those end-of-life expenses, like a funeral, a burial, that sort of thing. So in that situation, having a $20,000 policy or a $50,000 policy should be more than enough. So you're going to want to get out there and get a term life insurance policy. You're going to want to create or even update a will, and even a basic will is fine, but have that in place. If you have children, name guardians for your children. Assign beneficiaries on all your financial accounts. So all of that stuff has been taken care of on our end. My wife is the first beneficiary. If something were to happen to both of us, then there's a list of people. It kind of goes down. Consider creating a financial binder or some type of legacy drawer so that the location of accounts and passwords and plans are all laid out. And I do all of this as a calling, as a plea in love, not to guilt anyone, not to make anybody feel bad, not to expose anybody from the situations that I've experienced recently. It's just that these experiences were an unwanted reminder of just how important this stuff is. The grieving process is difficult. It's a little bit different for each scenario. I think about grandma who was 95, and there's mourning. Certainly there's mourning, there's sadness that she's gone. But there's also a recognition that she lived a full and fruitful life. And so the grieving may look a little bit different. It might not be as deep. But then we move on to like my father-in-law, who we all agree passed prematurely. And so there's questions, and there's frustration, and there's anger, and there's disbelief. And all of those stages of grief are even more prevalent. There's denial. No, like he didn't get sick. No, he didn't die. There's anger. There's bargaining. And eventually there's acceptance. But all of those are magnified tenfold, 20-fold, 100-fold for the 40-year-old who takes his own life. The anger is magnified. The disbelief is magnified. It's not easy. Death is not easy at any stage of life. But it seems that the younger somebody is, the more tragic it seems to be. When we lose our lives to a terminal disease rather than natural causes. When somebody is not even middle-aged and is either taken from this world, whether that be like a car accident or whatever, or they choose to leave this world. It's hard. It's hard. And so I share this not to guilt anybody, but as a call in love to say, do something amazing for your family today. Start the process of getting life insurance in place, that in the untimely, heaven forbid, untimely event that you are no longer here on this earth, that your loved ones have one less thing to worry about. That while their entire world has been uprooted and upended, they're not also concerning themselves with, how do I keep a roof over my head? How do I keep food on the table? How do I maintain this life that has been built?
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits Podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.